Morning glory and evening grace, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Very hard to say that today. Charlie Kirk was a friend and a colleague, and I was sitting in an airport lounge yesterday at the gate, waiting to get on. I was ebullient. I had spent the morning with Justice Amy Coney Barrett, had flown from the East Coast to the West Coast to do an interview. It was a great interview. She's a fabulous person, wonderful book. I was feeling pretty good, and Dwayne sent me a text. Charlie's been shot. And I immediately said, don't run with that. We don't know that. Then my son, a year older than Charlie, said, Dad, it's bad. Don't look at the video. And I did, and I won't ever again. It's one of the horrors of our age that I began thinking about Charlie's kids and how many times I'll have to see that video, and about Erica. I don't know Erica. I've known Charlie since 2013, but I don't know Erica or his kids. As I said, he had thousands of friends, and I was one of them. He had scores of colleagues, and I was one of them. I went back to my text chain with Charlie. We were often on text together, but I wasn't in a chat with him. And by the way, I want to thank Alex Marlowe for shouldering through yesterday's show and the day before. Alex was a very good friend of Charlie Kirk's. I'm a colleague, and I'm of not only a different generation, I'm two generations. He could have been my son. He's the son the age of my boys. And my reaction was disbelief, and I'm glad I was alone. And a number of people approached me to talk to me, because people see me on TV, they know me, and I said, thank you very much. He's beloved by thousands and millions. And the more I thought about it, I put it into three events. I met Charlie for the first time in 2013. The Western Conservative Summit is something that Colorado Christian University had done for years. And the university's then president, former Senator Bill Armstrong, asked me to come and teach. It might have been John Andrews, that former state senator John Andrews. Jeff Hunt runs it now. And Eric Hogue is the president of Colorado Christian University now, another colleague of Charlie's at some point. And they asked me a dozen years ago, come and teach a week with high school and college kids on the Constitution as part of the summit. And I did. And Bill, Senator Armstrong, said, I'd also like you to make room for an hour's presentation by this young man, Charlie Kirk, who's really trying to get young people involved in politics. And I said, gladly. So I sat in the back of the room, and I was 54, 55 at the time. And Charlie rolls in, and I don't think he was shaving. This bundle of energy, this human torch of enthusiasm. And he was an autodidact. And he said, look, I didn't go to college. I didn't need to go to college. I've been studying the Declaration and the Framers, and I know this stuff. And the kids lit up. And I thought, well, look, I have to watch this. Because he just started Turning Point with a fellow named Bill Montgomery, who's been dead for a few years now, Tea Party activist. And Charlie sort of went his own way. This is 4 years before Donald Trump. And as I've heard everyone commenting on Charlie, they make it sound like he existed nowhere until 2016 and the election of the president. That's not true. Charlie had begun a movement in 2012, and by 2013, I have to go back to the West Coast to get my calendar to find out if it's 2012 or 2013, he was on the rise. We next collided for a long period of time at the 30th anniversary of the Goldwater Institute in Arizona. And we were back-to-back speakers. You don't want to follow Charlie Kirk, by the way. He was so good. And the Goldwater Institute, their chief legal counsel is one of my former law students, Tim Sandifer, and he wanted to mix it up with a little eggheady Hugh Hewitt and then light some fire in these people, and that's what Charlie did. Then in 2023, the day before the massacre on 10/10, AP lit into him. And I got on the phone with him and said, I'll take it from here, Charlie. You don't have to speak out for yourself. And not that we always agreed. We often did not agree. I saw the great one, Mark Levin, make the same point. Among we conservatives, there are many articles of disagreement about which we are passionate. But we are friends. And friends argue. And they don't get angry. They get passionate, and boy, did Charlie and I have some disagreements over the years. But he was as kind and loving, and the most important arc of his life. The thing I noticed the most over 10 years, I didn't see him get married, don't know Erica, grieve for her, grieve for those babies. I've got grandchildren the same age, spent the summer with them. And I can't imagine them without their dads, all three of their dads, and my son-in-law, my two boys. And they will have people in their life who will step up. And it will get better, but it's really hard right now. So proud of the Vice President of the United States for going out to Arizona to be with the Kirks. That's a class move, Mr. Vice President. But in 2023, Charlie was hitting on all turbines. And he was also becoming very evangelical, extraordinarily so, to the point where I would begin to think, is Charlie becoming, Greg Laurie or Billy Graham? Is he going to change careers? I mean, he's clearly the most important political operative of the last cycle who wasn't actually on the Trump campaign. You know what else people haven't pointed out? Charlie didn't want anything. He did not want anything. The AP story, and I'll play you my commentary from 2 years ago in the next segment. The AP story accused him of making too much money for a nonprofit. Ridiculous. He was being paid what any moderate-sized nonprofit would be paid. Charlie made money, but he didn't make it from Turning Point USA. Turning Point USA was about turning the country around. But increasingly, Charlie was just a witness for Jesus Christ with people of his age. And he was a spokesperson for normalcy, for getting married and having children and living a life in community with people around you. And he was passionate. He went to the Oxford Union. I got to tell you, that's an intimidating place. I've done that. That's an intimidating place. Charlie rolled in there and took them all. Knocked them all down like 10 pins in a bowling alley. Do you know why? Because he practiced every day. He and Ben Shapiro and Michael Knowles, they're the guys, they go out there. Guy Benson, Mary Catherine Ham, they go anywhere. They talk to anyone. College campuses that wanted to sparkle, they would invite Charlie or Ben or Michael or Mary Catherine and Guy. There are a lot of people. But Charlie may have been the best at that prove me wrong bit. And because he was young, and because he was a handsome man, and articulate and funny, and unafraid, he was dangerous to people. I don't know who killed him. There's some clues today. I'll talk about that later in the show. He was dangerous to a lot of people. He was dangerous to people who did not like the witness for Christ. He was dangerous to people who hate Israel, because Charlie loved Israel. He was completely maniacally hated by those infected with end-stage TDS. And he was opposed by activists who saw he was winning. And he was winning in a way that only one other person has ever won. He was the new Rush Limbaugh. Now, I've always said Rush built the mall, and I've got a nice Nordstrom in it, maybe a sports chalet. Mark Levin, same thing. Mike Gallagher, Dennis Prager. God bless Dennis for his testimony about Charlie last night. I'm doing a PragerU event tonight inside the Beltway because Dennis can't be there. And friends help out friends, and colleagues do things for colleagues. And what happened yesterday is among the worst things that's happened in my 69 years. 9/11 was the worst. And Dwayne and I were on the air with Adam for 8 hours on 9/11. That was the worst. Yesterday is very close to being second place. Second place is October 7th, excuse me, and the massacre of the Israelis by Hamas. But this might be third. President Corey Compatore was killed by that assassin, but the president wasn't. That would have changed history. Well, history changed yesterday. You just don't know it. I don't know how it changed. It took a sharp turn one way or the other. I'm hoping it took a turn towards the values that Charlie believed in, and that everyone who was brought into political activity by him remains committed to it and to the way that Charlie did it. friendly and fierce, friend of all, enemy of none, willing to engage at any time and anywhere with anyone in good faith. And an assassin is out there who struck down one and 1,000 won't grow up. And we're going to miss Charlie a great deal, not just at the Salem Network, not just at Turning Point, but throughout the country. Thank you for joining me today. Again, a heartfelt thanks to Alex Marlowe, who guest hosted for me when I went out to California on Monday, and to interview Justice Amy Coney Barrett yesterday. And then he stuck around for yesterday's program. Of course, no one expected Charlie to be murdered. And Alex was his dear friend, and he hung in there, and I appreciate it greatly. I want to play for you when the AP went after Charlie days after the 10/7 massacre. I said, I got this, Charlie. And I was able, 2 years ago, had the opportunity to say this, cut number 10. Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. I will return to the situation in Israel next segment when Avi Meyer, editor of the Jerusalem and Post, one of the two sources for news directly from Israel in English language, Jerusalem Post, jpost.com and timesofisrael.com, joins me. I do want to cover quickly, the Republicans don't have a speaker. They're not even close. And it could go on for weeks. They'll have a vote today. It does not appear that either Jim Jordan or Steve Scalise is close to having what they need to put them over the top. I want to tell everyone who's just tuning in, you're watching on Salem News Channel, you're not seeing a video because we did not have a video from this. And I'm going to fast forward it, Generalissimo, to where I started talking about Charlie, because I spent a couple of moments on the speaker, and we don't need to rehash all that. But I want people to understand the AP started to put a target on Charlie 2 years ago, day or two after the massacre. They started to put a target on Charlie. So everybody in legacy media who is now trying to dial back their inner left-wing activist is trying to apologize for this. But let me, while we're editing that to get rid of the part about the speaker and get to the part about Charlie, let me play for you some comments that Charlie made about Catholics and Mary. This is why I thought Charlie was really stretching. Cut number 9.
But let me first say, I think we as Protestant evangelicals under-venerate Mary. She was very important. She was a vessel for our Lord and Savior. I think that we as evangelicals and Protestants, we've overcorrected. We don't talk about Mary enough. We don't venerate her enough. Mary was clearly important to early Christians. There's something there. In fact, I believe one of the ways that we fix toxic feminism in America is Mary is the solution. Have more young ladies be pious, be reverent, to be full of faith, slow to anger, slow to words at times. Mary is a phenomenal example, and I think a counter to so much of the toxicity of feminism in the modern era.
All right, where have you heard a young conservative talk about evangelical Catholic relations and about Mary? I have never heard anyone outside of my own faith denomination discuss that. I've had private conversations with people. Catholics do not worship Mary. They venerate her, as Charlie mentioned, and we seek the intercession of her and all the saints. And many people will be praying for Charlie in the Catholic faith on All Souls Day and All Saints Day. But he was an outspoken evangelical, and I hesitate to think of any other evangelical of his age who had remotely the reach that he does. There are a lot of good young pastors, and they have their niche, and they're very, very good. But Charlie was a crossover, right? He could dribble with both hands. He could shoot with both hands. He could do politics, and he could do faith. And he could do faith in a way that was winsome and welcoming, and I admired that a lot about him. From younger people who worked with him. Here's Katie Pavlik last night on Fox saying goodbye to our colleague from Town Hall, cut number 6.
I've known Charlie, or knew Charlie, since 2013. He had reached out multiple times. He was launching this new Turning Point Action. He had an organization that was named something else before Turning Point, and he really wanted to get started, and I was also getting started in my career. And I think my parents actually were some of the first people who donated to him as grassroots supporters. And he was always so gracious to them too, and always asked about them and always wanted to know how they were. And he loved America so much, and he spent his career and his short life growing up in front of us. I knew him as a teenager and watched him become a grown man with 2 beautiful children, his wife, and he died doing a...
That's what Katie was capturing, the effect on his contemporary colleagues. On his older colleagues, we were a mixture of a pain in the neck to him, Dutch uncles, quick with advice, eager to help, amazed at his success, welcoming young voices into the fray. Guy Benson, same age, same reach, cut number 7.
Charlie was a very special talent, and it is surreal and so disturbing, as Laura pointed out earlier, to be discussing him in the past tense. It doesn't feel real, but it is. I met Charlie a long time ago when he was a teenager, and I was just starting my career in Chicago, and he was starting this fledgling group of young people. He asked me to come speak to a room full of high schoolers. Might have been his first ever event, one of the very first. And we struck up a bit of a friendship, and I remember he asked me for my advice when he was 16 or 17 about going to college. And I took a very traditional line, and I said, I think you're bright and precocious. I think you should go get a degree, and politics will be waiting for you on the other side. And he was smart enough to completely reject my advice. And he started this organization that is extraordinary. And he has now legions of supporters and followers and fans who are grieving, who are shocked, who are angry, who are fearful, I think, for the country. But what he built, and it, again, feels so bizarre to be eulogizing him, but what he built is part of his legacy, but also part of that legacy, more importantly, is a husband and a father.
Guy is so right. Same reaction that I had. He was a teenager talking to high school students and freshmen and sophomores in college that summer of 2012 or 2013. And I wished him well, but you never know what's going to happen. A lot of people have big dreams. Charlie delivered. He just outworked everyone. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth yesterday, cut number 4, another millennial.
The life, example, and even death of Christ follower and American patriot Charlie Kirk give me hope. Sheer courage, no matter the arena. Charlie, we love you. We know that you have heard the Lord's words. Well done, good and faithful servant. Full heart, clear eyes. Like those on 9/11, he will never be forgotten. So I thank God for all of you and all of our fighters from that day to today and beyond. May God bless our warriors as they ruthlessly seek our enemies on behalf of the fellow citizens they love. We owe you and all of those who witnessed 9/11 nothing less.
It is possible to commemorate both the heroes and victims of 9/11 and Charlie, and we're doing it here on the Hugh Hewitt Show. I mentioned in 2023 the AP came after Charlie Kirk, not long after the massacre in Israel, and I began the segment by telling you about that. Here's where I got to Charlie.
There's another story. It's so the legacy media, AP, they've gone after my friend Charlie Kirk. Now, Charlie is a fellow host on Salem, but I've known Charlie forever, since before he became a radio host, before he founded Turning Point. Charlie was, maybe he had founded Turning Point. A decade ago, I was teaching at Colorado Christian University, and Charlie was, I think, an 18-year-old, 19-year-old young man who was out organizing on college campuses, talking about free markets and free minds, and the need to educate yourself. He's also a very, very, very earnest autodidact. Charlie works hard at getting smart. And Charlie has been organizing young people for more than a decade. And he's been very good at it, and Turning Point has become very successful. And just like the Federalist Society, AP, and just like Hillsdale College, Turning Point, Hillsdale College, the Federalist Society, any group that becomes successful on the center right to the conservative side, they take aim at the leadership and they try and make you think that they are a scam. They're not. Charlie used to make like $3 an hour when he started this thing. And last year, I guess they discovered that he was paid $407,000, which is, by the way, about United Way charity. It's what a lot of not-for-profit that operate close to the bone make. Charlie's not getting rich on Turning Point. His podcast makes him money, but not Turning Point. Turning Point goes out and does activism among young people, and the Republican Party and the conservative cause needs that. Charlie and I have linked arms on a lot of different issues over the years, like judicial nominees, but I don't belong to Turning Point. I've never received $1 from them. Never. I don't think I've spoken at one of their events. Charlie and I spoke together at the Goldwater Institute because Charlie is a very good speaker and I'm not so bad myself, and we've done some events together, and he hosts a program which is syndicated by Salem, but I'm not his defender. I'm not on his payroll. I don't take checks from Charlie. I don't appear at his events. I don't do the Federalist Society either or Americans for Prosperity. I like to be a free agent to talk about what is good and what is bad. Turning Point is unequivocally good for this country, and Charlie is unequivocally a good guy. So he's being attacked by AP. And it's predictable. The media hates effective center-right, Constitution discovering and defending activists like Charlie Kirk and Leonard Leo, and they go after Clarence Thomas, and they go after Sam Alito, and anybody. They'll go after Brett Kavanaugh, like we saw, like they went after Amy Coney Barrett. They'll go after everybody and anyone who stands for the Constitution. And we know why. They're just completely bereft of a moral compass. They can't even bring themselves. The leftists who are after Charlie Kirk now are a part and parcel of the leftists on campuses who are saying, and the Black Lives Matter organization, not everyone with a sign, but organization that has a "We Stand with Palestine" sign out there. And so keep pressing on, Charlie. People who know you have your back. And Charlie is young, he's enthusiastic, he's going to be there for 50 years. And he learns every day. He's a learning machine. He's going to get better and better. Long after I've gone to my reward, Charlie will be out there fighting the battles for conservatives.
That was 2 years ago, in about 3 weeks. So it is awful to listen to the confidence with which I predicted Charlie's trajectory. Earlier today, I was talking to Mike Gallagher, and I reminded Mike of the hockey stick graph that the climate extremists used to parade. I think Al Gore invented it or popularized it. And the hockey stick would show global temperatures, and then they would shoot up. The hockey stick actually applied to Charlie Kirk. He started out small and alone. I think he had one person with him when he came to the seminar in Lakewood, Colorado, at Colorado Christian College. Spoke for about an hour, told people about Turning Point, and moved on. 5 years later, he's co-presenting at the Goldwater Institute. A couple of years after that, he is very high up. He and I were working together on Supreme Court nominees, and now he was, until being murdered, the biggest thing in politics under the age of 35. There is no one else like Charlie. And I'm not here to predict who's going to take his place. He had created an enormous organization, and they'll find someone. They'll find the person who best represents Charlie's vigor, his enthusiasm, his joy, his Christian conviction, and they will carry on. And I hope that the Turning Point chapters on campuses across the country who are grieving today realize they just got a lot of work to do. And it's unfortunately dangerous to be a fan of free speech and open debate, but you can't back down. Charlie didn't. I'm Hugh Hewitt on a very sad day after the assassination of Charlie Kirk. I'm joined by Senator John Cornyn of the state of Texas. Senator, thank you for joining me on a day like today. I wanted to know a viewpoint from someone who served long through a lot of history, roughly my age. You probably remember RFK and Martin Luther King being shot. What were your thoughts about this yesterday?
Well, I don't think many people have witnessed the murder of a fellow American and somebody who was doing nothing but exercising his free speech rights to try to educate a generation of young Americans about some very important principles. And it is tragic that he was targeted and cut down at the prime of his life. So much potential ahead of him. His wife, Erica, and 2 children, obviously we grieve for them. But a lot of questions and that we need answered, and we don't yet know exactly what the motivation was of the shooter. But whatever it was, the message needs to be conveyed far and wide that political violence is unacceptable in America.
Now, Senator, I want to talk to you especially because before you were a senator, you were a justice on the Texas Supreme Court. I know you probably had to deal with some free speech issues there, not as many as the federal court. I was with Justice Amy Coney Barrett yesterday, and we were talking about constitutional issues. There's long been a doctrine. There is no heckler's veto. You're not allowed to shout someone down, and colleges can't keep people from coming. But what are we going to say to the colleges and universities of the country after an event like this, where Charlie was just there talking, big crowds, wherever he would go? Thousands of young people wanted to talk with him, and some of them wanted to debate with him. Do you think this will chill speech on campuses as a justice of the Texas Supreme Court? What would you say to the UT system about stuff like this?
Well, I'm sure that everybody's in shock, as we are right now, and maybe on calmer reflection, we can figure out, how best to communicate to this next generation of leaders that this is an important principle. And contrary to the cancel culture we saw during the previous 4 years, previous administration, that free speech is a fundamental right in our country and something that helps keep us free and make sure that everybody's voice is accessible and included. So I think it's more than just a legal question. I think this is going to be about inculcating this fundamental value in the next generation of American leaders. But I'm sure a lot of those folks who were in Utah at the university yesterday and saw Charlie cut down are in shock and wondering, am I willing to go to another meeting, another gathering in public and talk about issues that are of concern to me?
You know that our friends in the Democratic Party have been organizing astroturfing members' town halls. I don't know if it's happened to you yet. Do you think that's part of the problem, trying to distort political discourse and shout people down and be hostile in the crowd? I know it's not violence, but it's nevertheless the antithesis of the free exchange of ideas.
Yeah, Hugh, we've had this debate ever since the inception of our country and what the limits should be. And speaking of what the courts have held, yelling fire in a crowded auditorium is unacceptable. But pretty much beyond that, almost everything is fair game. But obviously acting out and committing these acts of violence is a red line for everybody. But I think it is a time for reflection. And I think we need to try to do what Speaker Johnson said today, is we need to lower the temperature. And just realize that people we disagree with doesn't mean we should hate them or vilify them, or even worse, act out a violent act against them. So there are important lessons here, but I think it's going to take a while for everybody to sort of get back to a point where they can have that discussion, make those reflections.
Now, Senator, there's no way to provide enough security to everyone in the country to take care of them. I was with, as I said, Justice Barrett yesterday, and Supreme Court security is pretty beefy. And I bet Senate security is pretty beefy. But on the other hand, President Trump went to dinner with Secretary Rubio and Vice President Vance, and a bunch of protesters showed up 10 feet from him. And I was kind of stunned. Do we all need to kind of work on marginalizing the extreme? I don't know how we do it, but as an objective, I think it's good to condemn extremism.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think there is enough security to protect each and every person all the time when they're engaging in speech or debate. And unfortunately, we've seen, particularly on the left, I really don't think it's as much of a problem on the right, because you have people like Charlie Kirk, who was a leader of the young conservative movement in America, proselytizing about the importance of free speech and engaging people openly and asking, if you disagree with me, let's talk about it. That's the way to deal with these issues. But this idea, as you point out, of just shouting people down or heckling them in public places, I think the most worrisome thing about this was that Charlie was a public figure, but he was not a public official. And we know public officials from President Trump on down have been targeted by assassination attempts. But this is spread even further, and I think ought to be a cautionary tale for all of us.
Last question, Senator. When you're campaigning right now, you got an election to win, and you're going to win it. But have young people turned out more than in the past? Charlie's passion was to get the people between 18 and 30 into politics. He was now 32 or 33 when he was murdered, but I've known him since he was 18 or 19. It's always been the same script. He's just gotten better at delivering it with deeper knowledge and a better skill set. He really got a lot of young people involved. Do you see that on your campaign?
Yeah, I think, he was an inspiration to a generation of young people who need to be engaged, not disengaged and isolated. And, the thing I worry about the most is that people think, well, my voice doesn't matter, or, the cake's already baked. And so there's no reason for debate because people are already locked into their views. But I think he sent a different message that was going to be sorely missed. I hope there are others who follow his lead in stepping up and filling that void left by his tragic death.
Senator John Cornyn, thank you for joining me on a difficult day from the United States Senate. I appreciate it very much. Utah officials have delayed a press conference because of, what did they call it? Rapidly developing events. So they had scheduled a press conference, but they say that in the investigation of Charlie's murder, there are rapidly developing events, so they had postponed the press conference. Got a DM earlier today from my friend Tom Weiler, who is going to be the next senator from Minnesota if Minnesota has a brain. He's a daily Mass attender, better Catholic than I am. And he said, profound gospel today, the daily reading. Jesus said to his disciples, "To you who hear, I say, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, pray for those who mistreat you." And then he added, on September 11th, as we mourn the murder and loss of Charlie Kirk, turn to the truth. And Tom's a man with a lot of hurdles thrown in his way, serving the country for so long as a submariner, developed Parkinson's, in politics now for the right reason, got a great young family. I knew him from his time in the Beltway. He's a great candidate, profound man of faith. And because Charlie was so out there on his faith, I thought I would pass that along to you. There are a lot of angry people. That is not the way. That is not the way. Matt Continetti has a piece over at the Free Press. Matt will be on tomorrow, which is, who will stop America's slide into the abyss? Charlie Kirk's death is the most stunning evidence yet that America is becoming two nations. I called my editors at Fox last night. Actually, I can't file today. I have to wait and think about this for a while before I write anything. I can talk about it, but I can't write anything. So Matt did a good job. The assassination of Charlie Kirk, he writes, is shocking on every level. He was shot in public in front of a large crowd and on video. The 31-year-old husband and father of two was not an elected official, but the most successful conservative activist in a generation. The attack didn't deprive a family of its center. It struck at the ties that hold a free society together. Open assembly, civil debate, viewpoint diversity. Like every terrorist act, the shooting was meant to instill fear. In this case, fear of speaking out, of exposure, of making a difference. I would recommend you go read the entire column. I can't do the whole thing. It concludes, the murder of Charlie Kirk could serve as a turning point. It could be an occasion for Americans to step away from the abyss and recover the moral clarity and habits of heart to sustain a republic. But if we fail, if the moment passes, if the tit for tat escalates, if we retreat from the public square into our private redoubts, then the abyss won't recede, it will widen, and America will be one step closer to the edge. Well said, Matt Continetti. Back on the East Coast after a quick 48-hour trip to California. I got a lot to talk to you about next week about Justice Barrett and our conversation. She's also going to join me on the Salem News Channel and Salem Media radio stations and our affiliates next week, and looking forward to it. Listening to the Law is a very good book, but I'm just still stunned, and now I'd like to hear from you. 1-800-520-1234. I really am not interested in anger or finding and telling on people who did really stupid things and said really stupid things. I go back to what, if you're just joining me this hour, Tom Weiler sent me from the Gospels today, for those who are daily Mass attenders. Jesus said to his disciples, "To you who hear I say, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, pray for those who mistreat you." That's difficult. That's hard. But Charlie was a very committed Christian, and he was not ashamed of the gospel. He proclaimed his faith in the resurrection of Christ. He did so repeatedly. I saw him yesterday. Again, I spent the morning, there's a morning event at the Nixon Library yesterday, so I was done by noon, and I spent the rest of the day on airplanes and in airports. So I got to watch a lot of Charlie. And I especially enjoyed his apologetics. And that was kind of new to me. I knew he was very adamant and very public about his faith, but I didn't realize he'd gone into apologetics and was pretty good at it. You know, my friends over at Biola, they invited me once to moderate a debate between Hitch, who's an old friend of mine, he's long dead, and Professor Craig Lane. I think I got that right, and on apologetics. And I realized that's really not a game for beginners. One believes or doesn't believe, I think, based upon faith, which is not particularly given to arguments from logic, but the argument from design has always been enough for me. But Charlie had it all down, including my good friend Dr. Mark Roberts wrote the book, Can We Trust the Gospel? Is one of the preeminent scripture scholars of our time. And yes, we can. There, as Charlie would rattle off, I mean, he had a mind that would just absorb everything. And so he learned apologetics, but I was kind of dumbfounded. I had not heard him do it till yesterday. I'd heard him argue politics a lot. I saw him at the Oxford Union. I watched that guy. I talked to him at numerous events. Not about apologetics. So I'm not interested in who you're mad at. I'm interested in what you think about Charlie. Tim in Santa Ana, California. Hi, Tim. Oh, it's St. Paul. I'm sorry. Hi, Tim.
Hi there.
You're on.
Oh, yes. I think it's very, very important that we can't let this defeat the cause. I think we need to work on finding his replacement and maybe double it. He's like the Billy Graham of debating. I'm a big fan of Billy Graham, by the way. But we need to find his replacement. We can't let this defeat the message here. I think he could have been president, by the way. I really believe that. This is like this shocking, and I can't believe the security wasn't better.
Well, I've seen a video that's very disturbing from the auto parts store where they had clearly identified a shooter. It was like the Butler incident. I haven't talked to my friend Selena Zito yet. It's got to be very disturbing for people who are at Butler. And I think the president's got to be very disturbed by it because the president is 79 and Charlie's 31 or 32. And the disparity in result from turning your head. And Charlie leaned forward. I can't watch the video again. I'm not going to do that again. But Charlie could have done anything he wanted to. I want people to know he could have had any job he wanted. If he called up President Trump and said, I want to be the Secretary of Commerce, I think President Trump would have said, fine. I want to be the chairman of the RNC. I think President Trump would have said, fine. Charlie did not want that. He wanted to help America, and he wanted to elect Donald Trump. That's what he did. Now, will there be a new leader like Charlie? Impossible. Because Charlie grew that organically, congruent with the age of exploding social media and podcasting. So it's very hard to recreate something that was organic. 10 years in the making, right? 12 years in the making, 13. It's just 13 years from now, I'll tell you if there's another Charlie Kirk. And I hope I'm allowed to do that. Thank you, friend. Dick in Beaverton, Oregon. Hi, Dick.
Hello. Somewhat cynical, but since the left has been responsible for shootings in a political sense, from shooting Representative Scalise up through running riots and killing people, and Democrat urban areas shooting people and like crazy, and now with Charlie Kirk, I think that if someone's really serious about gun control, we ought to be serious about disarming people on the left, such as...
No, again, there's violence on the right. Let's not forget that. Minnesota State representative or senator was murdered, I think, by a right-winger. I'm not sure. There have been violence on the right and the left. It is always disgusting and repulsive and has to be condemned, and we have to be inclusive. But I live 15 minutes from the field where the madman in 2017 tried to kill the entire Republican congressional delegation. I don't know Justice Kavanaugh, and I don't live near him, but there's a guy coming to his house to shoot him. 2 assassination attempts on President Trump. There's a long list. I haven't covered it all. There's a long list. Josh Shapiro's a Democrat, targeted because he's Jewish. Tried to burn down his home, kill his family. Political violence is disgusting and the mark of a diseased mind, and it always ends with blood in the gutters because revolutionaries want that. And don't give it to them. Don't give it to them. Thank you, Dick. Eddie in Houston. Hello, Eddie. You're on the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Hey, thanks, Mr. Hewitt. Somebody told me about the Salem Network roughly about 6 weeks ago, and they said, Eddie, you got to go to a big box store and get a cheap rabbit ears, or what I got is a thing I put in the window. And I started getting the Salem right out of the air. So
are you watching the news channel, or are you listening to the radio?
I'm getting the TV station.
Oh, great.
I'm looking at you right now. But anyway, I started watching this 6 weeks ago. Well, Charlie, I was familiar with him because of his appearances on Fox. And what I wanted to say to you, Mr. Hewitt, is that yesterday, of course, it first started out, he'd been shot, and we didn't know. We were hoping he was actually, I think they said he might be in stable condition.
Yep.
And then, of course, the next thing was he was in critical. And then finally, they dropped the bomb on us and told us he was dead. But I stayed with it. I couldn't walk away from the set. I knew you were busy yesterday, so I didn't see you yesterday. But listen, whoever the graphics people are on Salem, that was a beautiful graphic that they hurriedly put together. It's a beautiful picture of Charlie on a blue background. Unfortunately, with
we're showing it right now. 1993 to 2020.
I know I'm not talking about anything serious, but I'm just saying, I'm sitting here yesterday, and I know he's dead. And when y'all break for commercial, and that graphic, or whatever you call it, that artwork comes up, it just hits you like a ton of bricks. Because even though Charlie's dead, seeing him, that beautiful picture and that blue background and his name, I don't know why. I guess I'm crazy, but it just tore me up even more.
No, you're not crazy. I could tell you about a half dozen conversations with complete strangers yesterday in airports. People recognize me from Salem News Channel, from Fox News. and they came over. Yeah. Charlie is a colleague and a friend, but we're not close. We're just colleagues and friends. There are a lot of people who are suffering, and I don't even know that I've fully absorbed it yet, and I don't think anyone has. I think the president is just grieving. I think J.D. Vance is grieving. People who were involved in the campaign know what Charlie did to help the country. He got Donald Trump elected in no small part. That's what Turning Point did. That's what a young man in a hurry can do. And he did it from 2012 to 2025, 13 years. Imagine what he might have been over the course of a career. And I don't know that electoral politics is what his game was. I'll be right back for more of your phone calls right here on the Hugh Hewitt Show. I just saw two incredibly disturbing things. Ilhan Omar attacking Charlie, to Mehdi Hassan. I've sent Dwayne the clip. I'm not sure we can play it. I believe she dropped some words prohibited by the FCC. But what I heard was ignorant. And then a moron took a scooter through a vigil for Charlie last night at the Idaho State Capitol, saying F Charlie Kirk, F Charlie Kirk, and the crowd did exactly what the left would want him to do. Beat the living daylights out of the guy. That is not the way. That wasn't even Charlie's way. I go back to the phones. Alan in California, I think. Hi, Alan.
Hi. I just wanted to say that Charlie is the man in our generation who teaches us to speak the truth in love.
He tried. You're right. Thank you. I understand the emotion. I do. Mitchell in Connecticut. Mitchell?
Yes, hi, Mr. Hughes. I feel sorry because they take it away from somebody to speak for us, speak for the truth, speak for the believer. And I something I saw for the people interested in that atrocity. The profile for that person, they look at me, somebody from outside this country, because they hire for him, the face for him. They look at me, somebody, foreign person, I believe from Venezuela or something like that, something to maybe...
Mitchell, we don't know yet. And I always discourage speculation. We'll be surprised. I have no doubt the FBI will find the killer. I am afraid the killer will have been killed because I don't know how one person could pull this off. I still don't know what the whole deal is with the old guy who they arrested, and the second guy I figure was just looked suspicious. But now they've got a picture. Now they've got his movements. They got to be able to ping the car. We'll find out. We don't have to speculate. We just can wait. Thank you, Mitchell. Mike in Glendora. Hi, Mike. How are you?
Hi, Hugh. Really good. This is Mike of Kevin and Sophia from your class in Chapman. They got married, by the way, a month ago.
Oh, congratulations.
Thanks. Hey, Kevin worked for Charlie. I don't know if he told you for 3 years when he was at Colorado State, and really helped him in honing some of his debating skills and stuff.
And he's a fine debater. Kevin is a fine debater.
Yeah. Thank you. What I find somewhat most disturbing about this is a lot of the cheering, like you were just talking about, and on some of these websites. I just don't understand. But it's what Dennis Prager used to say, and I was really glad to see his comments yesterday. You know, the Democrats, we when we debate, we think they're wrong, but they want us dead. And I hate to be it's negative, but it just seems that that's the state of the Democratic state today. They can't disagree with us and debate us. They want us out of the way. And
no, if Kevin were making this point in class, I would say, now, Kevin, what percentage of Democrats are you talking about? Because some of my best friends, in fact, my very closest friend, godfather to my son, is a Democrat. And my other roommate was a Democrat. I know all sorts of Democrats who are wrong, but they're not rotten. We just never agreed on politics. I mean, a lot of politics comes from where you're born, and the life you live and that sort of thing. Some people are union members and come from union families. Some people think abortion rights are number one. I'm going off to do a school event with Ruth Marcus, my old colleague from the Washington Post. She's a Democrat. I think we've got to be very careful. There are crazy people, radicals, revolutionaries of the left, and there are reactionaries of the right who pick up guns and do violence for political reasons.
If I'm still on, I think Kevin would agree with you that it's a small percentage, but it can be a bad percentage. But yeah, it's still disturbing to see so much joy on the one side where we don't have that joy. I mean, in fact, I've talked with Kevin. You know, I despise Obama and Biden, but I never wished them dead. And I think that's that's an overriding feeling for most Republicans, and is not the same for Democrats.
It is certainly a Judeo-Christian attitude, and one that I think Charlie would emphasize, because he did emphasize it repeatedly. Hey, give my regards to my students. I'm glad that they're wed. Thank you, Mike. Jean, is it Jean in Minnesota? Hi, Jean.
Jane, Jane. Hi, I just want to say that I've been watching. I'm a 68-year-old female living in Minneapolis, and Charlie Kirk has changed my whole perspective on values and everything else. And I'm just so saddened. I've heard him talk about Minneapolis and some of the names he's called Minneapolis, and I'm in 100% agreement with everything he says. And he's not only inspiring young people, he's inspiring many older generation.
Well, I mean, it's always good to see a talent, right? Why do we watch college sports? Because we like young people doing great things. Why do we watch the Olympics? It's not because they're senior citizens. It's because they're young athletes in their prime, and there are many such people struck down in the prime of their life, and Charlie is one of them, and they will not grow old. That is not much comfort to his wife and children and family, but it is true. Charlie will always be 33 or 32, always be the guy who helped win 2024. Thank you, Jane. Joe, Minnesota. Hi, Joe.
Hi, Hugh. Thanks for taking my call. I'm reminded of words by G.K. Chesterton when I think of Charlie Kirk, and now is a very fitting time. Jesus promised his disciples three things: that they would be completely fearless, absurdly happy, and in constant trouble.
Yep. Chesterton is a smart man. Thank you, Joe. Lisa in Minnesota. Gosh, I got a lot of Minnesota calls today. Hey, hi, Lisa.
Hi. Oops, that's my dogs. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
So I just need to explain. So I met Charlie. Well, I didn't meet him personally. I should say that my neighbor went down for the presidential inauguration, and he brought back a picture that he got a picture with him. And he goes, "Haven't you heard of Charlie Kirk?" And I said, "No." And then I started listening to him on the Salem News Channel, and he totally changed my way of thinking. I'm a 58-year-old woman, but this guy is just amazing, and his voice really means a lot. Like, he said the right things. He believes in God, which really alerted my ears because I feel like I'm a Christian. And he really opened my eyes of things that I've never even thought of before.
Thank you, Lisa. That's a touching tribute. I appreciate it. I have to go to break, but I appreciate it. Stay tuned, America. One of our great sponsors is the American Legislative Exchange Council. Jonathan Williams is their CEO, chief economist as well. Jonathan, welcome. It's a grim day, but I didn't change up the schedule because I wanted to ask you about your state legislators with whom you're so close and who you met with in Indianapolis. What do they think about the mood in this country? I mean, on one hand, things are going great. On the other hand, there are these wild crime statistics, and then an assassination of a good friend of mine, and I'm probably of yours, Charlie Kirk. What do they say to you in the hallways of an ALEC meeting?
Well, it's a good point, Hugh, and our prayers go out to his widow and his family. Charlie was really an American treasure, and it's a dark week for America. I think you're right. I mean, there's a whole lot of optimism in so many ways when you're talking about the Trump reforms and economic policy and so many big things that are happening in the states as well. But we've got some big unresolved problems as a country that we need to address, such as, I mean, this is a brutal reminder that there's real good and real evil in this world and in the United States, and that Americans need to take it more seriously to address our political or policy differences in a civil, constructive way that Charlie Kirk always went out and did and met with the other side and shook their hands. I was with Speaker Mike Johnson a little bit earlier this afternoon. He was recounting his stories with Charlie, and that's exactly what he would want all of us to do. And I think at ALEC, it fits so well in that we are always looking to reach across the aisle, and even with those with whom we disagree on so many issues, we want to find those common sense commonalities of policy that we can agree upon. And so I think we all owe it to ourselves and owe it to Charlie's legacy to double down on exactly that.
Now, Jonathan, when you got together in Indianapolis last month, maybe it's 2 months now, that was after the murder of the Minnesota lawmaker by the reactionary. I think he was a man of the far right. I'm not sure. I can't recall. Did anyone talk to you in the hallways about their growing concern about being in public life?
Well, I was actually, the day that happened, I was in Chicago, and I was with the Minnesota state senator who was learning about that the morning that we were having breakfast at one of our smaller group ALEC academies. And it's something that hits really close to home to so many of our ALEC members that, maybe haven't been visited at their doorstep, thank God, but, lots of threats around the building, around their offices. We've seen the violence even when Scott Walker was trying to do those heroic reforms in Wisconsin. People were literally breaking down the state capitol building in Madison, Wisconsin, looking to stop the political, peaceful process that we have as a country and state legislative bodies all across America. And so I do think there's going to be a revisiting of certainly security measures around state capitals as a result. But just overall, I mean, I think that this is something that we need to address. Right, left, we have to get together and agree to disagree when it comes to policy, but always do it in an agreeable, civil way.
Now, this comes against the backdrop of the murder in Charlotte. So I am curious, does ALEC do crime and punishment? Do you folks dive into the prison systems and cash bail and issues like that? Normally, you're an economics-driven, education reform-driven. The American Legislative Exchange Council is nonpartisan. Democrats and Republicans can belong to it. If you want to know what's going on in the States, sign up for their newsletter, alec.org/Hugh. But does ALEC do crime and punishment, Jonathan?
We do. In fact, Hugh, we have a judiciary task force at ALEC that deals with things as far-ranging as tort reform on the civil justice side to all the way to addressing violent crime. And so many of these issues that we're seeing right here in Washington, D.C., or in Fairfax County, or in Alexandria and Arlington, where we have these prosecutors that don't prosecute violent criminals, right? And then we wonder, surprise, surprise, people are back on the streets again committing similar crimes. I mean, it's not that long ago that we had members of Congress who were carjacked at gunpoint several blocks from the United States Capitol because of Washington, D.C. not being able to get it together. So I think the president is certainly onto something very real when it comes to these blue cities, especially need a whole lot of help to address these issues. But I mean, we have to address the underlying problem, which is not prosecuting violent crime where it exists. And so this is going to be a continual discussion. And we have a new publication that we're really excited to be releasing later on this year, addressing the violent crime epidemic and what state legislators can do about it.
Oh, I'm looking forward to that. Very quickly, Jonathan, how about mental health and institutions to deal with the mentally unstable? Does ALEC, that's a difficult problem. Have you done that one yet?
We have a mental health working group where we convene at Indianapolis this summer and at annual meetings throughout the last number of years to tackle that issue. And frankly, it's been one that maybe on the right they haven't spent enough attention talking about. We at ALEC have tried to raise the awareness on that issue because it's a huge factor as part of this, Hugh.
Thank you for doing that. Boy, ALEC does great work. Sign up for their newsletter, American Legislative Exchange Council, alec.org/Hugh, alec.org/Hugh. More of your phone calls. Thank you, Jonathan Williams. There is a lot of misinformation, outright lies on X and everywhere else. by people who are looking for clicks and exploitation. Wait for an official announcement from anyone about anything about the assassin of Charlie Kirk. Mehdi Hassan is a man of the left, the far left, and Ilhan Omar is a woman of the far left, and they decided today would be a good day to bag on Charlie Kirk. Here's their exchange.
What I do know for sure is that, you know, Charlie was someone who once said, you know, guns save lives after a school shooting. Charlie was someone who was willing to debate and downplay the death of George Floyd in the hands of Minneapolis police.
I think he called him a scumbag.
Right, have no regard, downplay slavery and what Black people have gone through in this country by saying Juneteenth should never exist. And I think, you know, there are a lot of people who are out there talking about him just wanting to have a civil debate.
Complete rewriting of history.
Yeah, there is nothing more effed up, you know, like than to completely pretend that, you know, his words and actions have not been recorded and in existence for the last decade or so.
I'm speechless because I'm sure over the course of 10 years, Charlie said things that make Ilhan Omar mad, and I'm sure he had commentary on George Floyd, which didn't concur with hers. That's it, though? That's the time to do this? I don't think so. But she is a radical, and Mehdi is a radical, and they are radicals. Tim in Pennsylvania. What do you think, Tim?
Hello.
Hello. Go ahead, Tim. You're on the air.
Okay. I'm a Democrat. I'm a lifelong Democrat. I'm a union Democrat. I'm anti-abortion, pro-gun. Some people would call me the Republican light. But here's my take. I'm listening to a lot of radio in the last day or two since Charlie was killed, and they're talking about toning down the violence in America. And my take on this is it has to come from the top. And if President Trump isn't willing to tone down it on his own end and show a little empathy for both sides and a little compromise, I don't see how we can ever get there. What's your take on that?
I think the president was very good yesterday in eulogizing Charlie. I think it is incumbent upon people in politics to speak what they think, and he does. He's got a much lower regard for conventions, which is why he's a populist and so popular. But I don't think he's ever called for violence. I don't believe he's ever endorsed violence. And yeah, I know he uses nicknames and things like that, but that's not what we're talking about here. There's such a difference between guns and calling people fascist and Nazis. That incentivizes the unhinged to act. That's a big difference. So I don't have any criticism of the president's speech today or yesterday. If you give me a specific, I can debate it with you.
I'm not talking about today. Yes, ever since he's been in office. Now, for any change, the leader at the top has to take responsibility, and he has.
No, I don't agree with that. I don't. I think the president is well within the bounds of rhetoric in the United States. He is just much more candid about what he thinks than we are used to from political actors. And that's, by the way, why he won, because he was.
I understand.
But I appreciate the call, Tim. William in Morehead City, North Carolina. Hi, William.
Hi, Hugh. Listen, those who did this need to be held accountable. And it started with Maxine Waters, and she said it, get in their face. And then I do not recall the gentleman's name, I'll call him gentleman, who did say we must use violence. We will bring violence. So they are the ones, they need to be held accountable because somebody who obviously had a mental disability of some sort took those words to heart.
I'm not going to agree or disagree with that. There are revolutionaries who believe in violence who are perfectly stable. They kill people. And all of the people in Antifa who've been involved in violence over the last 5 years, they're not all nuts. Some of them are, but they're not all nuts. They're radicals outside of the system, and the country's never put up with it, and we can't put up with it now. Thank you, William. Kevin, Austin, Texas. What do you think, Kevin?
Hugh, I think that, I'm 65. I remember how old I was when 9/11 happened and how that affected me as far as politics and the whole world, right? Charlie Kirk was just 7 years old when 9/11 happened.
Right.
And the impact he has for all the people that were, you talk about, he grew that organization organically and that type of thing. The impact on them is going to be, tremendous. And I think that's something that people have to keep in mind, especially your listeners, if they know somebody that they're related to, a niece, a nephew, child, daughter, son, grandson, anything like that. This is going to be devastating for them.
He had thousands and hundreds of thousands of people who looked up to him, and it is devastating to them. And I am hopeful that the incendiary people, like the guy in Idaho last night, I don't want them beat up.
Right.
I would like them to look in a mirror and say, what is wrong with you? Really, what is wrong with you? Thank you. Virginia and Nevada, you've got about a minute. Go ahead, Virginia. Virginia, go ahead.
Is that I'm an 83-year-old widow that took care of her husband that died of cancer. And we had a 64-year-old. We were married for 64 years. And I watched Charlie Kirk every day. And he was a young man that lived in reality, not fantasy.
I'm glad you called because, Virginia, you're making my point. He started a movement of young people, but he was wildly popular across all demographics. That's why a lot of people were afraid of Charlie. Thank you, Virginia. Coming up, Victor Davis Hanson. His new book, The End of Everything, has come out with a new edition. And I had scheduled to talk to Victor weeks ago, and it just so happens to be the day after Charlie was assassinated, and Victor was friends with Charlie as I was. So that is coming up in hour 3. Melanie in North Carolina. Hello, Melanie.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi. I'm so thankful that you caught my call. I so want to honor Charlie Kirk and the example and the strength that he gave. I have 3 boys. They're 33, 41, 43, and they were all refreshed by Charlie Kirk and his devotion to his God, his family, his wife, his marriage, and they're all going to carry on the strength that he gave them. I mean, I lived through a generation where men were absent. They weren't fathers, and they weren't around to love their children. And my children learned, they know how to do the exact opposite and they so appreciate and love Charlie Kirk. And I just want to give that honor to him.
Thank you, Melanie. That's beautiful. I appreciate it. Thank you. John in Los Angeles. What do you say, John?
Yeah, hi, Hugh. Huge fan. I think on the whole, our country is hurting. We all need to dial it back. This has gotten out of control, and if we all just live lives where people don't want to harm us or kill us just because of our ideas, and we should all live lives where people don't want to celebrate our deaths when we're gone.
Yeah, I really don't know that that's possible anymore, but I do believe in continuing to engage the left in argument. I'll try and get Congressman Khanna on next week, one of the more lefty people or the regular guest on the program. But Charlie was not a burn it all down guy. He was an engage and build guy. And I want people to remember that. Thank you, John. Eduardo in Tampa Bay. How are you, Eduardo?
Yeah, good afternoon, Hewitt. It's on your screen. The best thing that we can do to honor Charlie is to win those midterm elections. That is the biggest exclamation point we can put on the lefties.
I hope everyone hears you. It's very important. Those elections matter so much. Thank you, Eduardo. Glenn in Michigan, last call. I'm going to talk to Victor for most of the hour and keep my eye on the press conference if it begins.
Hugh, I'm afraid we're moving towards irreconcilable differences. I feel like I'm in the majority, and I don't think the majority can live with open borders, cashless bail, defunding the police, normalizing trans, unlimited genders, no prisons, fighting ICE. The list goes on and on and on.
Those are all 80-20 or 90-10 issues, though. You just have to get people to be clear on where they stand and vote accordingly. I'm very confident of the political future of the United States. Very, very confident. I just don't want more people killed as the left realizes they're losing. Charlie was killed because he was winning, not because he was losing. Assassins don't seek out losers. I've spent the first 2 hours talking about Charlie as an individual, a person that I knew well and have known since 2012 or 2013, when he was literally just getting started and talking to 10 high school students in a room. And there are lots of people who know Charlie a lot better than me. But there is only one person I think can put this in perspective for us, and it's Victor Davis Hanson. Victor, of course, classicist historian extraordinaire with Stanford. He is the author of so many wonderful books, including most recently, The End of Everything. And I have been listening to The End of Everything for about 3 weeks. And last night, as I flew from the West Coast to the East Coast, I listened again to the beginning and the end and a little bit about the Aztecs, because I was just trying to get my mind off of Charlie. Victor, welcome. Thank you for joining me. I do want to talk about The End of Everything, but I'd like to begin with your reflections on the significance of an assassination of a young political rising star.
Well, I don't like the word irreplaceable, but it applies to him. I can't think of anybody under the age of 40, either conservative or liberal, that had such a multiplicity of talent. He was an administrator. He created a huge, enormous organization from nothing. He was very instrumental in the 2024 victory of Trump by his massive voter registration of young people. If you look at the statistics compared to 2020 versus 2024, Trump in the key states made sizable gains in the youth vote. He could write, he had a podcast, he spoke very easily, extemporaneously. I don't know anybody in the world with 1 year of college who would wade in to debate at Oxford and Cambridge and do so well. So he was just an unusual person, and it's not going, I don't think anybody on the conservative side could ever approach that level of talent and effect and influence. So it's going to be, and I think that was the aim of the assassin, and the assassin grasped that.
We are going to find out more about the killer in the next days. I'm sure now that we have a picture and a gun, they will capture him unless he takes his own life. And I know what was written on the casings. I'm not going to speculate, but it's an assassination. And you and I, Victor, can remember Robert Kennedy and Martin Luther King, George Wallace being shot, I think in the 72 election campaign, a couple of shots taken at President Ford, and then of course Butler. But this is one like Robert Kennedy's that worked on a younger figure in the political arena. What impact does it have on our country beyond sorrow?
Well, because Charles Kirk was both a political activist, but he was also in the media, in his podcast, his interviews, his columns. So we don't really see that too often in the United States. We see it in Europe and Latin America, Mexico, where groups will go after journalists or media prominent. I mean, we have people who have been killed that were journalists, but not that prominent. And so this is sort of, I don't know what you would call it, you crossing the Rubicon, because it's sending a message that there's everyone on the conservative side is fair game. And the reaction of some people on the left, at least the initial reaction, I don't know if they've subdued their emotions, but it shows that they're not unhappy. And we saw the same type of illness after Luigi Mangione, where he was considered a folk hero for killing Brian Thompson. And the same thing happened after Trump. The same things happened with threats to Elon Musk. So I think this is This is the beginning of something very dangerous, because I think people on the left, if this person turns out to be the left, will feel that this is a legitimate way to achieve political power that they lack right now. They don't have any political power in the House, the presidency, the top courts, and there are 30-70 on the major issues, and there's a radicalized element that allows this to happen. And I think also very quickly, if you continue to call the President of the United States a fascist, or Hitler, as we see, or New Republic puts a cover story where he looks like Hitler with a mustache, or you have your House Minority Leader come with a baseball bat, or you have kickboxing videos of House representatives are going to fight, and it's all fight in the streets and what you see at ICE, then that filters down to people, and it brings people out of the woodwork who otherwise would stay there. And I think we've created a climate where it's considered that some people on the left feel they're morally superior, they're intellectually superior, they're part of a stratum that is superior, and they feel that any means necessary are justified to their noble ends. And that's a very dangerous thing to do. If you have
Victor,
mindset.
yesterday I spent an hour with Justice Amy Coney Barrett talking with her about her new book, Listening to the Law. And we did not talk about specifically the portion of her book that dealt with what justices have to deal with now. The Kavanaugh near assassination, the daily protests, the leaks from the court. We didn't talk about that. I'll talk with her about it when I interview her on air next week, and I'll play the tape of that. But it seems to me the new normal was her security detail was extensive. We were inside of the Nixon Library. You've been there at the Yorba Linda. You know, it's very secure. She had done the Reagan Library the night before, very secure. Do you think we're going to enter an era where people just don't do events in the open air anymore?
I don't know, but when you mentioned Supreme Court, and I was referencing mainstream politicians lowering the bar, I remember Chuck Schumer got out in front of the court while it was in session at a throng of pro-life protesters, and then he yelled out by name Gorsuch and Kavanaugh and said they had reaped the wind and they were going to sow the whirlwind, and they were, quote, you're not going to know what's going to hit you. And then a few months later we started to see this very scary phenomenon of people assembling at the homes of justices, and one was a potential assassin. As you know, he was talked out of it by his sister. So yeah, I think that justices in general, but when you look at the Scalise and you look at the two Jewish Americans that were killed in Washington, the attack on the Scalise and some of the Republican leadership, and the two against Trump, even Josh Shapiro's, that attack on his home, that person was a radical pro-Palestinian. I get a little bit irritated, when everybody just says this is just a climate of violence. I'm not trying to excuse there are people on the right that have employed violence, but in this particular time, in this particular moment, it's mostly people on the left that justify it, and they tend to be unapologetic about it. They just come.
Well, we have in the law we have a phrase, excited exclamation, which is sometimes admitted into trial if you're making an utterance in the moment of excitement, it's considered probative. I saw the TMZ video yesterday. It's not dispositive for me, but it sounded like people were cheering. I read Blue Sky on the airplane for a couple of hours last night, and I'm amazed at how evil people are or how sick. So this brings me to the moment we're in. We've talked about President Obama ushering in a revolutionary period in American politics. Donald Trump being the counter-revolution, the attempt to start the counter-revolution through lawfare, the continuation of the counter-revolution. What's this? Is this what the Grokkai being murdered by, they were tribunes of the people. Charlie was really a tribune of the people. Is that this?
Yeah, I think because we are in a counter-revolution and we're questioning everything, such as the transgendered idea that it's a normalized third sex, or the DEI that your superficial appearance is essential rather than incidental to who you are. The Green New Deal has lost traction. I think people on the left feel that top-down revolution that was not shared by the majority of the people is now in danger. And it's not just in danger, there's millions of jobs that are in danger, careers, reputations that are in danger, and they feel that they can eliminate key people in that counter-revolution, whether it's Donald Trump or Elon Musk or Charlie Kirk, and I think there will be other threats to other people. Even lowly people like myself, I mean, I live out in the country, but I had my home swatted where somebody said there was an armed intruder, and an armed sheriff showed up. There was nobody here, of course. I went to the local bank that I've known my entire life, and I found that my entire savings and checking had been hacked and completely drained. I asked if it had happened to anybody there in the bank. No. So I think that all the people on the conservative side that are somewhat outspoken are going to be questioned, and I think it's going to continue. I really do, because I don't see people on the left, by and large, apologizing for it or saying that it was completely wrong. Even when the MSNBC analyst was fired, if you look at that exchange, Katie Tour, the host, really prompted his response, Matthew Dow, because she was the one that the first thing she said in this segment was that Charlie Kirk was a divisive person. It was a conditional sentence. If he was divisive, then you can fill in the blanks, and the blanks would be the obvious implication that he deserved what he got. And basically, Matthew Dow
it's interesting about
channeled her.
Katie. He's not divisive. He's an actor in politics. He would go onto campuses and engage with young people, and they would do prove me wrong moments. It made for great videos, viral moments. He would give ground occasionally, and he always ended with a smile and a handshake. Charlie was actually joyful. I don't know that this won't darken a generation. Do you think it will?
Yeah, I think it's sort of a force multiplier. I mean, we're talking on 9/11, and then we had Irania Zaratustra, who was murdered, not just murdered, but in her death throes and bewilderment, facing death and eternity, the guy walks by dripping blood. And I listened to the video very carefully, and I could hear twice, maybe I'm mistaken, if so, correct me, that he said, "Got the white girl," twice. Then the three people across the aisle got up, watched her die, and didn't even lend a finger. And there it was all, then the mayor's reaction, and then the circumstances of why DeCarlos Brown were out. It was just overwhelmingly the worst. It was sort of the culmination of left-wing ideology in so many things. It was reminding me of the less toxic but also lethal Palisades fire, just a train wreck of leftist ideologies all coming at once to destroy this poor girl's life. And then no one really saying publicly, why don't you cover this? Why are you suppressing this? Why are you suffocating this story? Why didn't these people help? What was going through his mind? Why was he out as a 14-year felon? That type of thing. And then we have Charles Kirk, and it just, I think those events, and there was a murder in Auburn as well by a felon who shouldn't have been out. I think it's just overwhelming to people, and they think whatever's going on, enough is enough. And the best thing I think for Charles, and I had just done Charlie's show in late August and had a long talk with him. You're absolutely right. And I'd been out, to Phoenix and spent a couple of days with him. And in the past, he wasn't a divisive figure. He always wanted to encounter people and see if he could persuade them. And the statistics show in the 2024 election, they made sizable gains in the swing states because of those efforts, along with voter registration. But I think people they're kind of bewildered, but they do have an idea that enough is enough, and the best thing they could do is register in enormous numbers in November and do something historic and not lose the midterms as most presidents do after 2 years, win them by a decisive margin. That was something he was really interested in.
Let me ask you, Victor, about autodidacts. I met Charlie when he was 18 or 19, as I said. He didn't know a lot, but he had a lot of enthusiasm. And he would call and compliment me on Hillsdale Dialogue with Dr. Arnn. He couldn't get enough. Autodidacts are often driven to learn more and more and more, and he participated in all the Hillsdale courses. I'm sure he participated with you in that. and he was on a trajectory. I don't know if it was political or not. I don't know that he had ambitions for himself. He certainly could have had any job in the White House that he wanted. The president liked him that much. He didn't want anything. He wanted to build his movement. But are autodidacts unique in your experience in terms of their hunger for knowledge?
Well, in the field that classical philology and classics in general, it's ironic that you asked me that question, because I think the three great achievements in the last 150 years were all autodidacts. We had Heinrich Schliemann, and of course he made the argument there was a historic Troy in Mycenae. He was a German banker. And then we had Michael Ventris. He was an architect that had cryptology experience in World War II, and he proved that Linear B was Greek, and the Mycenaeans were not non-Greek speakers or Semitic people. They were Greeks. Everybody that were classics PhDs and formidable scholars had not been able to decipher it. And then in some ways there was Milman Parry had a degree in classics, but he was a maverick, and he went out and lived in Serbo-Croatia, and he proved that Homer did not write the Iliad or the Odyssey, that it was a product of oral composition, which exists today in Serbia and the Balkans. So I've always been very sympathetic to autodidacts, but I will say this, may be controversial very quickly, I'm more sympathetic now than I was even 20 years ago or 30 years ago, because something's happened to the humanities in the university where the people who are trained are not trained well. In my field, they do not know Latin and Greek in the way that we were trained. They don't know classical scholarship. They're theorists. Theory in the humanities has become an excuse not to learn the discipline. So English PhD will not know Milton. They will not know Shakespeare's play. They won't know Ben Jonson. They'll just read contemporary theory. They're not well educated. So I think the decline of the university, at least in the humanities, makes the autodidact in some ways more important than ever.
That's why I think the Hillsdale courses online matter so much to America, and millions of people are taking it. Victor, I want to transfer now from the tragedy of Charlie's death and the circumstances of what it says about the counter-revolution and the revolution to your book, The Rare Abrupt End of Civilizations. And by the way, it's fascinating. I don't know where you found the time to do this. I only knew about Carthage among your 4 case studies, and I didn't know much about the Third Punic War. I knew about the Second and the First, and I didn't know anything about Thebes. I knew Byzantium fell, but I didn't know how decrepit it had become and internally rotten. I didn't know anything about the Aztecs other than they were destroyed. And your argument is a final siege or invasion that leads to the catastrophic disappearance of a people and a culture is not only not rare, it occurs with a certain frequency. You mentioned as well the Cherokees, the Jewish, Yiddish community of Eastern Europe, that these things can collapse in a hurry. Now, I thought part of the message of your book was, America, wake up. Hypersonic missiles, enemies who are evil, the rapid deployment and distribution of hypersonic missiles, aircraft carriers being targeted, it could all change in one day, in the way that Israel kind of changed 2 years ago on 10/11, and we changed 24 years ago on 9/11. Do you think that events... Pause right there. I'll come back. I recorded this right before the beginning of the show, and I want to make sure you hear Victor's answer to this. It's always a privilege to talk to America's most eminent classicist and military historian, Victor Davis Hanson. I've posted the entire interview uncut over at Hugh Hewitt at YouTube. So go over there and send it around. His comments on Charlie are so on point, and he had such a great affection for him that he's a wonderful person to talk to about Charlie Kirk. I wonder if Legacy Media is looking for Victor to comment, or if they'd rather spin. I want to take a moment to thank all of law enforcement that are involved in the hunt for Charlie's assassin. They are flooding the zone from the FBI. They are getting the assistance of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. They have, of course, all of Utah's law enforcement authorities involved. They will find the killer. It reminds me, in a macabre way of the aftermath of the Boston Marathon bombing when they flooded the zone to find the Sonara brothers. And this is what's happening now. Be patient. I don't have any news, and I'm not going to repeat rumors. Back to my interview with Victor Davis Hanson. Do you think that events like the assassination of Charlie presaged that? Because we've had other political assassinations in my lifetime, Yitzhak Rabin in Israel, for example, and they didn't presage anything other than tragedy. How do those two fit together? The end of everything and then the end of an individual's life as an act of violence.
Well, I think we're at the end of everything of the status quo. I think everything is now on the table, and we have a strong element of people who believe that anything is justified by their noble and superior morality and intellectualism, and that's the left. And so I think that I'm afraid that we're going to see more and more of this. And as DEI starts to fade, there's billions of dollars and millions of people invested in it, and they're not going to go down without a fight. So yes, I'm worried about that. One of the commonalities of those four civilizations that were destroyed, not just destroyed, but as you point out, were eliminated in toto, is that they didn't think that that would happen. They didn't realize how dangerous the people were outside their walls. They didn't understand that people like Scipio Aemilianus or Alexander the Great or Mehmet II considered themselves intellectuals, men of letters. They didn't understand that men of letters or highly sophisticated people can be the most deadly. They didn't understand that you cannot count on outside forces like allies. The Carthaginians thought, well, the Macedonians will come to the rear of the Romans, or to the very day Constantinople fell, they kept saying, surely Western Christendom will come down the Hellespont at the last moment, the Dardanelles, and save us. That didn't. Thebes said the Spartans are almost to the Corinthian isthmus, they'll be here. That doesn't happen. So you have to be self-reliant, you have to be deterrent, but most importantly, you have to be empirical about what status you are in, what era your own society or civilization is. Is it financially stable? Does it have an adroit military? Does it have a workable, stable government? All of these things were lacking there. The worst thing was that it was very tragic writing that book, because when you look at what the Carthaginians did, they surrendered their arms, they trusted the Romans, and they had no idea what the Romans were up to. They just couldn't conceive of it. And the same thing is true of Constantine, the last emperor. He had no idea what the ultimate Ottoman objective was. He thought he did, but he really didn't, and either did the Thebans. And I think sometimes we feel that we're protected by our two oceans or our affluence or our traditions, and we're not. And in the epilogue, I pointed out the things that Mr. Erdogan is saying. He said he's going to send missiles into Athens. He's going to send missiles into Israel. He said that he has a solution for the Armenians that his grandfathers had. So I take him at his word. And I take the same thing of everybody has discounted Putin and all of the oligarchs and the Russian media and said he never used a tactical nuclear weapon. He doesn't want to destroy people. I don't believe that necessarily. I think that we're very close to a NATO-Russian confrontation, as we saw with the drones recently.
Oh, my goodness. As I was reading, again, second time, because Victor and I were originally supposed to talk about the end of everything last week, and then circumstances intervened, so I got a chance to listen to it. And I wrote down some notes. Long unaddressed vulnerabilities. Well, that is us vis-a-vis the Chinese Communist Party and our open borders. Long unaddressed vulnerability. We let everyone in. Waning empires do not want to accept the fact that they are waning. Naivete, hubris, ignorance of or indifference to new military technologies, a retreat into fantasy, and especially gullibility and ignorance about their enemies. And I loved your line, Victor, the cargo of affluence and leisure mark these precipices on which civilizations dance. Well, if you wanted to describe, if we were playing a parlor game, people would say, I got it, it's America. That would be it. Earlier today, I talked with Victor Davis Hanson about our mutual friend, Charlie Kirk. back to that conversation.
And we're $37 trillion in debt. Trump is trying to restore the military, but he doesn't have the financial wherewithal really to do it yet. We were down 50,000 recruits. They made an amazing effort to get the ranks back to normal size, but we're running a $1.1 trillion deficit. We're trade deficit. Probably, he inherited a 1.9 budget deficit. And we have an open border with 10 to 12 million people came across. We have 60, 70,000 people until recently were dying a year from fentanyl. And these things were not being addressed. And more importantly, I think, is the attitude of the people. We've got a credo, that says it was a moral thing to let in millions of people and break federal law, but if you dare try to follow the law and return them to their points of origin, then that's amoral. Moral to let them in and break the law and endanger the security of the United States, but amoral to try to correct that and follow the law. And that's where we are.
We're also at a place where 50,000 military-age males from the People's Republic of China crossed the southern border. 50,000. That is so stunning that people are not alarmed by that. And you mentioned what happened to you at your bank. We have a sponsor, Webroot. I'm telling everyone, you just can't live on the internet unprotected anymore. And it's not because of kids in their basement in their underwear. It's because of rogue criminal cartels in Eastern Europe, the Chi-Coms, the Russians, the Iranians. Everyone is trying to do this. But our blissful indifference, Victor, you're neither. People mistake you for being a pessimist. You're not a pessimist. You're something of a scientist of facts. Where do the facts lead here?
Well, the saving grace of the United States, it's Westerners in general, as Churchill said of democracies, they always do the right thing last. It's a very self-critical and self-healing society. And we saw that. I mean, if we had this conversation 2 years ago, you said to me, don't worry, Victor, 6 months into 2025, the border will be closed. There will basically be no illegal immigration, and that 40 to 50,000 soldiers that they're missing in the Pentagon, and they say due to, drugs or obesity or gang, that's going to be limited. And Iran is not going to have a deliverable nuclear weapon for at least a few years. I would have thought you're crazy. And yet we did that very quickly. And whatever people say about Donald Trump's language sometimes, he has done, I can't think of another Republican of any stripe who would be able to endure the level of hostility and still be able to stage this counter-revolution. I've never seen anything like it. It's everything from DEI to architecture to iconoclasm, every aspect of our culture, our social structure, our economics, our military, he's trying to address in 4 years. And he's been, for all of the criticism, he's been very successful. So we can change, because most of the four horsemen, so to speak, of the Western apocalypse that we in Europe suffer, and we know that it's, as you said, open borders. It's fertility, 1.4 in Europe, 1.6 here. It's DEI, and it's this crazy war on fossil fuels and trying to really destroy us by unreliable and costly wind and solar and other mandates. Those were all self-inflicted, every one of those. And they can be addressed by simply changing the policy and unleashing the value and the strength of Western civilization, empiricism, meritocracy, rationalism, the Judeo-Christian tradition. All of that is still there. We just need to reignite it. And societies are not linear, they're circular. So we can recover if we have the will.
Matt Continetti wrote in the Free Press today, and I think Matt is one of the brilliant young minds of the rising generation. Who will save us from this free fall? I'm paraphrasing the title. And I thought to myself when I read it, well, there's J.D. Vance, there's Marco Rubio, there's Tom Cotton, there's Ted Cruz, there's Elise Stefanik. There are a bunch of hard-nosed, serious people coming up, especially the vice president speaks passionately and from the heart. And I know the left hates all those people, hates them. But do you think the left might crumble? Solzhenitsyn said in The Oak and the Calf, What if it's all paper mache, referring to the Soviet Union? Turned out it was. You could poke a stick through it. That was his phrase. What if the left is all paper mache and Mamdani and all these other people are piled on slogans that don't work outside of blue jurisdiction, deep blue jurisdiction, and Gavin Newsom would get crushed by Rubio or Vance or Cotton, whoever we nominate. I really do have hope that the new generation, much younger than you and me, are very, very hard-nosed. What do you think?
I do. I agree entirely with you. Conservative traditionalism is winning the younger generation, but the blue ideology, we know it doesn't work. It doesn't allow people to get married and have children and buy a home. It doesn't make them safe, and people know that. We're getting 4 or 5 million people who are self-selecting a year, fleeing these blue states like my own and yours. And in addition to that, you look at the fertility rate in red states, it's almost 2. And the top 10 states as far as fertility at 2, 1.9 are all red, and the bottom ones at 1.2, 1.3 are all blue. So that ideology is nihilistic, it's suicidal, it's inert, it's ossified, and it's not a dynamic. Let's keep dividing the pie, never enlarge it. Let's just keep arguing. It's pre-civilizational racial tribalism, it's radical or secularism, atheism. There's nothing in it that's dynamic. And once they gave up the old liberal democratic alternative to conservatism, which was I wasn't an adherent, but I admired many people on that side. That's gone, and they have become nihilistic. And I don't think it's a death cult; it's a suicidal cult. So I don't think.
Last question. Let's pause right there. I'll come back for my last question with Victor. At this hour, by the way, Senate Republicans have triggered the nuclear option. They are changing the Senate rules, as Majority Leader Thune promised last week on this program, a week ago. And 48 President Trump's nominees will be confirmed next week in the first batch under the new rule set adopted by a 53 to 47 vote in the United States Senate. Here is the conclusion of my interview earlier today with Victor Davis Hanson. Charlie was very outspokenly evangelical, and more so as the years went on. Now, I'm a Roman Catholic Presbyterian, so I can speak both Catholic and Protestant. Charlie spoke evangelical, but with a great deal of sympathy for and encouragement of young people who had rediscovered faith in God. Do you see that as the binary here? Those who have a belief in an ultimate purpose better than themselves that are based in the Creator, like the Declaration of Independence, versus the left, which is based, I don't know, whatever Marx believed in, nothing, actually, nihilism. Do you see the ascendant faith as being...
I do. I think people are embracing religion and transcendence in the Christian sense, and when they look at the people who are not, and they see what they're doing in that emptiness of their soul and mind, they're captives of their appetite. So they have all this emphasis on the internet and selfies and high cuisine and the latest kitchen and the latest neat place to go, and it's all empty. And I think young people are saying to themselves, I don't want to just live anywhere. I want to live somewhere. I want to identify with some place and some people. I want to know my grandparents. I want them to know my children. I want to go back to what my parents described, and because this world is a cruel world, and a part of it is an atheistic world that believes that the only existence is here. There is no soul. And you better cash in while you can and satisfy those appetites. And it leads to what we've just seen with Charlie and on the train in Charlotte and elsewhere. And I think young people are to be commended, because every time I meet them, it just happenstance in a university classroom or at the airport, I'm always impressed. I really am. Much more so than
Your last two books, The Dying Citizen and The End of Everything, must reading for everyone. Are you done writing, Victor, or are you still at it, and what's next? Because that's kind of two parts of a trilogy, The Dying Citizen and The End of Everything. What's the third book?
Well, I just finished a 130,000 word, it was called The Fall and Rise of Donald Trump, and I was interested not as a not just a pro-Trump book. I was wondering how somebody who had come from the depths, and I tried to historically suggest he had been in worse shape after January 6th than any major political figure in the past who attempted to come back. How he came back, what they did to him, how he was able to survive, and the last 2 chapters, because everything changes every day, or what is this counter-revolution and will it work? And that should come out by Basic Books, I think, in March. I've had a few health issues, so I'm kind of cutting back, but that book, I just finished it, so I'm waiting for the general edits, and it should be here in March.
Boy, am I going to look forward to that. Victor Davis Hanson, a treasure of America, and always a pleasure. The entire interview, uncut, posted over at my YouTube channel. Do go and get The End of Everything, because The End of Everything puts you in the right frame of mind to understand Charlie's murder yesterday. I'll be back tomorrow, America.